you ever found yourself in a time of transition? Once or twice, every now and then. So we are in a time of transition at Unity Northwest Church. It's awesome. It's great. It's exciting. Thank you all for coming and participating. Just by being here, you're participating in what the new energy is going to look like. Because your presence brings that element of desire, that element of what's needed for Unity Northwest Church moving forward. So good for you for being here. I am in the process of moving. Jason and I are creating our new space together, and it's really exciting. It's a lot of fun, and it's different, and it's change, and some of it's going awesomely, and some of it's going, you know, like, where is the cord to the printer? You know, things like that. But it's lots of fun. So we've talked to you about the 7 steps for successful life transitions for years. For years. So why should we talk about anything new today when we're talking about transition? Because it is the best process that I found to help during these times. So when I found out that Greg was moving to Florida, I went, okay, my life is going to change too. So I took my place where I was living, and I used that 7-step process, which I will talk a little bit more about, actually, for the next 20 minutes, to be exact. And I released my place, because for the last 25 years, that's what I've done whenever I've moved. Whenever any kind of transition in my life is happening, I have pulled out that 7 steps and used it to release my old, or at the time my current situation, so that I could move into the new situation more freely, more clearly. And a couple of weeks ago, let me back up. I want to give a little disclaimer here. That doesn't mean everything's going to go perfectly all the time, but it clears the way for a lot of stuff. So when I started packing, I did my kitchen first, because I don't know why I did my kitchen first. But I realized what happened was I packed all my coffee filters. Now, that's a big deal to me, because I am the person who sets up the coffee the night before, so all I have to do in the morning is push a button, and magic happens. Coffee just happens. It's awesome. And so packing my coffee filters was kind of a big deal. Yeah, I could go out and buy more, but the first time I bought them, I ordered them from Amazon, and there were like 1,000 of them, and I still had at least 3/4 of them left, right? So I wasn't going to go out and buy more coffee filters. So just scratch that off. Well, why didn't she just go out and buy coffee? No. So anyway, so my teapot got a lot of good use over the last couple of weeks, and my green tea was pulled out of the shelf. So anyway, so I'm packing, and I kind of move on to other rooms, and I come back to the kitchen, whatever. I'm using one of those big tape guns, which are fun, right? They're also really sharp. So I'm taping some boxes together, and I puncture a couple of holes in my finger. I'm like, okay, have I packed my Band-Aids? And that was after bleeding over things, all over things for a few minutes. Did I pack my Band-Aids? So guess what I packed?
Your Band-Aids.
No, I didn't pack my Band-Aids. The thing I use like once a year, I didn't pack. The thing I use every day, gone. So I had Band-Aids, so I bandaged myself up. I went back to the kitchen, pack up my coffee maker, I'm like packing all over. I had no rhyme or reason to the way I was doing this, except to label the boxes, right? So I'm finishing up the kitchen a few days later, and I'm reaching into those top corners that, even though I'm tall, they're still, there's a few corners there I can't reach, and I found more coffee filters. Meanwhile, my coffee maker is all taped up in the box. But I took my apartment up the 7 steps, so it should have it should have gone seamlessly. No puncture wounds, no days without coffee. But what it did is it made me able to, it helped me be able to step back and go, oh well, here we go. So, but what could have happened if I didn't was, oh my gosh, I have to move. Oh my gosh, I have to do this. I have to do this all by myself. I have to pack these boxes. I have to move everything. I have to reestablish myself. I don't have time for this. I work full time. I've got meetings. I've got my son to take care of. I got all these other things. I don't have time to move. And I could have complained about it the whole way. But why? What good would that do me, right? So I took my apartment at the Seven Steps. Jason and I are settling in. We're figuring out where to put the silverware. We're figuring out where to put the TV and how to set it up. And do we really need the VHS player? Do you remember what a VHS player is? The tapes, yeah. So it's fun. I learned about the Seven Steps 25 years ago. My meditation teacher, Jane Elizabeth Hart, taught it to me before I got married, because that's a big life transition, right? I've used it on everything. Every time my children have moved from one developmental stage to the next, I will use that 7 steps to release them from their old developmental step as they move into their new one. So when they were toddlers and they move into preschoolers, I wasn't still treating them like toddlers, right? I cleared out that part of our dynamic so that I could be the mom they needed for their next step, and I wasn't still dragging them along. Because you know those parents who still treat their kids like they're 12 when they're 48. So this has been such an awesome tool for me over the years that I use it as a therapist in my practice all the time. I always have copies in my office so I can hand them out to people and teach them about, here's a process, here's how you can work with your emotions so that you can move during this time of transition from one thing to the next. And it's got these 7 steps. It kind of covers all the bases. It's got the steps for the good things, steps for the expectations. Like what did I wish and hope for from the situation? Maybe some of it got fulfilled, maybe some of it didn't. But what's left over that didn't get fulfilled, then we clear that out. And what are the disappointments and difficulties? What are the forgiveness needs? Covers all the bases. And what I've discovered over the years is that when we have anything in our lives, people, places, situations, circumstances, anything, we grow these energetic thought form, emotion, tentacles around that thing, that person, place, thing, or situation. And it's part of us. It's part of our electrical circuitry, if you will, of energy. And so when we're moving from that to a new thing, it just makes sense, right? To do the processing work, the conscious processing work, to release our energetic tentacles from the old thing so that we can use that energy as we pivot and move into our next phase, our next step. But we don't like to do that, do we? Because it's work. Because we have to maybe journal, preferably journal, write it all out, get it all out there. We have to put some time and energy when we're busy packing boxes, right? We're busy with the other things of life that seem more pressing, that seem more important, but they're not, right? Because we can use that energy and get busy with, okay, how do I make this transition perfect? How do I control as much as I can control so that this change can be easy and I can move into it? Because that's what we see. But what we don't see is that we're dragging, when we don't do that work, we're dragging that old thing with us because we still have our tentacles in it. So then we get to the new thing and we're like, well, that dishwasher doesn't work like my old dishwasher did. I really don't like it, but I'll suffer with it. And then maybe kick it when it's not working the way I want it to be working, and then, gosh, and then the vacuum cleaner doesn't work like my old one, and this, and blah, 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 on and on and on, and we're comparing everything, and, ooh, I like this one better, and my old one was garbage, and I like this better, and instead of being able to step into our new thing with new eyes and a new openness and curiosity about, hey, this is a new adventure, what's it going to be like? It's not going to be like the old one because it isn't the old one. So the 7-step process allows the churning of emotions, allows the churning of all the thought forms that have been attached to one thing and move it into the next. One of my favorite 7-step stories was when I first learned about this, and I probably used it a few times but this is one of my favorites, and it was when Greg and I were living in Florida, and he had just taken a church in Albuquerque, New Mexico. So we were moving, and it was a smaller church, so we were downsizing everything. So we sold both of our cars, and I was pregnant with our oldest, and so we got a little family car that we were going to just drive around, and then he was going to get another car, just an old used one to bop around in once we got there. So we got this Toyota RAV4 when they first came out. It was this really bright blue. It was so awesome. It was so pretty. And it was the first car either one of us had that had the little electronic door opener, remote door openers, right? And so he had one, I had one. And when we first got this, he would always click the button first and unlock the doors. And I got so mad. Why am I getting so mad about this? This was the most ridiculous thing. I was bizarrely annoyed by it. So much so, I never even told him at the time that I felt that way because it was embarrassing. That's how annoyed I was. So I was talking to my meditation teacher once a week at that time on the phone, and I told her, I said, this is what's happening. It's so bizarre. It makes me so mad, and it's embarrassing. Why am I so mad about this? I don't really understand. And she thought about it, and she said, well, did you take your old car up the 7 steps? I'm like, no. I mean, we're excited about this move. It's an exciting thing. I don't need my old car. I don't have any attachment to it. And she said, in her infinite wisdom, why don't you take it up the 7 steps and see what happens? Maybe there's nothing. Yeah, she didn't really think there was nothing. So I pulled out my pen and paper, and I took my old car up the 7 steps, and I realized that was my single girl car. That was a car that my dad had co-signed for after I graduated from college. My first car I ever bought for myself. First insurance, first loan. That's why he had to sign off for it, because it's like, darling, you have no credit. You can have bad credit, you just have no credit. So you're going to have something to sign this for. Okay, Dad, that's what dads are for. So it was my single girl car, and I realized as I was journaling, it's like, oh, this meant this freedom, this independence, this new expression of me, moving into adulthood for the first time in my life, and now I'm letting it go for a family mobile. And I can't take my single girl consciousness into my family mobile consciousness, right? Into my family consciousness, because I need different things for my family than I needed when I graduated from college. So that was the most beautiful demonstration of trying to fit an old consciousness into a new consciousness. It didn't fit because I needed something different. And any transition that we're going through, whether it's one that we choose or one that's imposed upon us, it's a change in consciousness, and we're going to need something new. So what I learned from that experience was, if I do this ahead of time, I don't have to worry about this business about being annoyed and being so embarrassed by it that I wouldn't tell anybody, but the person who was counseling me once a week, that I could do this up front. I call it front-end maintenance, right? Where it's like, instead of waiting until your car breaks down, you take it in for the regularly scheduled tune-ups and things. So we just take care of things beforehand, and it makes the crooked road straight. So from then on, anytime there's a change happening, large or small, I'd be like, okay, gotta take it up the 7 steps. Every year on my birthday, I take myself up the 7 steps because I'm different from one age to the next, like my kids are. You know? And I found that it's not always the thing that people want to do. I found in my practice that it's like, well, either I'm excited about it so I don't feel like I need to release it because I'm really excited about what's coming, and I try, so maybe you guys will listen, I try really hard to tell people, you know, if you do this now, it just clears up so much of the anxiety and the angst that we have during a time of transition, and it lets us to flow with the things that come up that we're not expecting, like puncture wounds and prematurely packing your coffee filters. We can just flow with those things. But it's hard because we're human and we got other things to do, right? But it's worth it. It's worth it. 3 years ago, about 3.5 years ago now, my dad was having some issues swallowing. And he would go into the doctor and they'd kind of work with him a little bit, and it would work for a few months, and then he'd have to go back in. And then 3.5 years ago, he went in to have a procedure done to help him with the swallowing, and they found cancer, which no one ever wants to hear about anybody in their lives, right? So they had to go in and operate. So they set up the schedule for that. And my brother and I were working on setting up schedules about being there and everything. And I'm realizing I'm getting scared. Like I didn't realize, I think I was in shock before, and then it kind of calmed down enough that I could really see that I was feeling scared. And I didn't want to go and take care of my dad for 2 weeks in fear. But it was an aggressive form of cancer, and it was in his way of being able to eat. So I had to really step back and go, okay, I have to take care of my emotion around this so that I'm not walking in there oozing fear all over my dad when he's trying to heal, right? So I took him up the 7 steps before I left. Not once, but twice. Because I knew I had to be in the clearest space that I could possibly be. And I also had to come to terms with the fact that whether he lives or dies is not my choice. It is his. It's between him and his soul. And I have no say in that. So I have to be okay with anything. So I took him up the 7 steps, I released him, I released his soul. Not that I wouldn't have cried if something had happened. He is alive and kicking, quite literally, today, and so that I feel very fortunate. But I didn't know that at the time. I did not know that at the time. So I did this work before I left, so when I got there, he and I hung out. My mom got the flu, my brother got the flu, so it was just me and my dad, because everybody else had to stay the heck away, right? So my dad and I hung out in his hospital room while he was recovering, watching TV. And you don't realize how many food commercials are on TV until you are sitting next to somebody who can't eat at the moment, right? So we had the best time. We would crack jokes and be like, Dad, did you have any idea how many food commercials? He's like, yep, I do now. We had lots of fun. We talked, we reminisced, we just had the best time together. And then when he got home, I was helping at home, helping get his medicines and his food schedule going and all of that. And I was able to leave knowing that he was okay, which was awesome. But also, I was able to leave knowing that I had the best possible time with my dad that I could, given the circumstances, right? So being able to do that ahead of time, but when I talk to people about this, and this is understandable, this is our human part coming out, right? I talk to people about this kind of thing, and they're like, oh, I could never do that. I could never release, if somebody, people have had pets who were sick and, who would eventually need to be put down for their own mercy, or people in our lives who may be making their transition, or people, places, things, or circumstances that we feel overly attached to, where it's like, oh my gosh, if this wasn't in my life, I don't know what else I would do. Those are the things to take up the 7 steps, because then we're not wearing our garments of life loosely. We're holding on tightly to them, and they disintegrate and they go. Our garments are not meant to be here forever. Our people, places, circumstances, things in our lives are not meant to be here forever. They're meant to change and move and grow. It's like the weather, except not as interesting to talk about, right? If we don't like what's happening, we'll just wait a little while and it will change. And sometimes it changes when we don't want it to change, like looming winter coming forth, right? It'd be nice if it were, in my book, 95 all the time, but, that may be too hard for some of you. But things are always changing, so it behooves us to have a system in place that we can go to help ourselves cooperate with the changes that are going to inevitably be taking place. A few weeks ago, Greg offered the class, taking Greg up the 7 steps, right? So that the church can release the old and be opened to the new, because there's going to be a different flavor here, right? There's going to be a different flavor, and we're going to flow with it, and we're going to go with it, and we're going to support the new person the best that we can, but we've got to make sure we're clear. So if you have any leftover stuff about Greg not being in here anymore, and oh my gosh, what's new, what's going to happen, where am I going to be? We don't know. We don't know who's coming in. We don't know if you're going to like it or not like it, or have to find someplace else, or embrace it and be here 5 times more regularly than you were before, or whatever. It doesn't matter, but what matters is that you're in alignment with your heart and soul, because that's going to bring that clarity to our space collectively, too. So the 7 steps for successful life transitions, which is an appropriate name for them. The questions, the journaling questions, are on a sheet of paper outside of fellowship. I invite you to participate in that, whether it's with Greg being gone or whatever transition you have going on in your life. How many of you have some kind of change, some kind of transition going on in your life right now? Okay. But I know those of you who didn't raise your hand because it's not happening right now, you know, because you've been there. You can't be an adult and not have that. Have had some kind of change. I love that quote by St. Francis, I wear the garments of life loosely. He was our friend saint who called his body brother donkey, right? Like, I feed it, I water it, it goes with me wherever I go. It's cool. He knew it was his body was his vehicle to move around in, and our life circumstances are our vehicles, our stages for our life lessons to be learned, and we have to allow our tentacles to cling on there, because that's how we invest ourselves enough to learn something from it. But then when it's done, we let them go, and we allow that energy to create and be part of our new step. So I invite you to just kind of think of that and apply that to whatever change you have going on in your life. people, place, circumstance that might be changing. And step into that and just feel, what would it be like to say in the middle of that, or before it happens, I wear the garments of life loosely and I move freely. I wear the garments of life loosely and I move freely. And it does make the crooked road straight. To be able to be in the flow, to be able to let go of the old. Otherwise, it's one of the obstacles that gets in our way. We let go of the old and we move into that new space freely and clearly, and we move with it, and we move with all the extra things that are going to come up anyway, because life, things get in the way. You pack your coffee filters, things get in the way and they happen, and so we just have to flow with those. We just have to flow with them. So let's get into that space of wearing our garments loosely in prayer. With open minds, open hearts, with curiosity and excitement for moving forward. We say within ourselves, I wear the garments of life loosely and I move freely. I wear the garments of life loosely and I move freely. I wear the garments of life loosely, and I move freely. And let's say that aloud together.
I wear the garments of life loosely, and I move freely.
Thank you, God. And so it is.